All right, that was Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer throwing his support behind a bill which would overhaul safety protocols and procedure for railway companies. An overview of the legislation reads in part, not later than 1 year after the date of enactment of this act, the Secretary shall issue regulations or modify existing regulations for a high-hazard flammable train. One of the 6 co-sponsors of that bill is Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. It's our pleasure to welcome him back to the show. Senator, great to see you.
Good to see you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Look, I know you're on the front lines of this tragedy that the citizens of Ohio are dealing with. I just want to get that why do you think, though, that more regulation is the answer to this tragedy in this particular case?
Well, I think that, first of all, the regulation has to pass a cost-benefit test. And, with these things, you want things that increase safety without destroying the rail industry. And I think this legislation strikes the right balance. It's why I'm thrilled to have Senator Hawley and Senator Rubio from the Republican side on this particular legislation. If you think about what we're really trying to solve here, let's just take one issue. So when you have this terrible catastrophe in East Palestine, the firefighters went into this train crash, into this fiery situation, not knowing what was actually on the train to begin with, not knowing that it was filled with hazardous chemicals. So the thing this bill does is actually forces the train companies to label these things appropriately so that local authorities and first responders know what's on them. I think that's common sense. It's not the sort of thing that's going to cost a lot of money. What it will do is give local authorities proper notification, and I think that clearly strikes the right balance.
And I agree with you. I mean, you want the first responders to be able to know what they're dealing with, right? Do you think that you can get support from your House Republican colleagues from the state of Ohio?
I think we can. I actually think that this bill is going to have a lot of bipartisan support. It's going to have Republican support and also some Democratic support as well. So, look, we have to do the job of persuading our colleagues. We have to actually make sure that people understand what's in the legislation, why it's important, why it solves the problem. Look, I think there's justifiable concern. You don't want to go after the rail industry unnecessarily. You don't want to overreact to a tragedy that causes problem for the rail industry. But again, I think this is something that the rail industry can follow relatively easily, and it's also going to make our railways so much safer. The thing we got to point out, Sean, is that we have over 1,000 major train accidents in this country every single year. That's after we dumped nearly $1 trillion into infrastructure. We should be seeing these things go down, and I think some common sense approaches can ensure that happens.
Right. So, you know what's interesting? I hear, and I am one of the people who's largely critical of how Biden and Secretary Buttigieg and others have reacted or not reacted to this tragedy, right? I can't believe that Biden hasn't been there, considering how he's reacted to other tragedies. I can't believe how Secretary Buttigieg has bungled this. But when I ask a lot of officials in Ohio that we've had on the show and that I've talked to, how the federal response has been, how places like the EPA has done responding, they've said they've done a good job. So when it comes to you, do you have any concerns or criticism with any government agency or individual in terms of the response to the people of Ohio?
Yeah, let me say a couple of things about that. First, Sean, you have to recognize that people on the ground in Ohio are dealing with an incredibly difficult situation. They don't want to alienate federal officials who they know are an important part of hopefully providing help down the line. So they're in an impossible situation. But my job as a senator is to tell it like it is and to apply pressure to the federal government. And I think the federal response to this, Sean, has been a complete disaster. In particular, Secretary Buttigieg and President Biden have shown no moral leadership. They've shown no obvious concern. Neither one of them visited until Donald Trump visited last week, and Secretary Buttigieg then showed up. But importantly, Sean, this is really, really a critical issue. When this accident happened, Pete Buttigieg did not investigate why it happened, try to get to the bottom of it, and identify solutions. What did he do? He blamed the Trump administration, and he blamed them in a way that was totally false. He accused them of causing the accident, even though the Washington Post independent fact checkers have said the Trump administration had nothing to do with this accident. What I'm proposing we do is not blame anybody. We actually solve the problem. The fact that the Secretary of Transportation has been playing the blame game instead of solving problems, it's a huge, huge problem and a huge failure of leadership.
You know, this is why we need more people and voices like you in the United States Senate. You're a truth teller. You speak from the heart. You make a lot of sense. So I'm so glad you're actually in the United States Senate and dealing with problems like this. I'm sorry that it takes a tragedy to hear things like this, but you get to the bottom of solutions. And thank God that people like you are serving. Before I let you go, though, I do want to get your thoughts on Newsmax. As you know, it's been deplatformed by DirecTV. How important is it, as somebody who has talked about the forgotten people, that we have an outlet that has the ability to have those voices heard, and that Newsmax be returned to the lineup of a place like DirecTV?
Well, it's so important, Sean, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, from AT&T and DirecTV on down. You cannot have a major American communications company deplatforming such an important voice for conservatives, and like you said, a lot of forgotten people, even some who aren't conservatives, all across the country. So Newsmax has a very important role, and if we allow these major corporations to shut down dissent and to shut down voices that are inconvenient, we're going to lose the First Amendment and we're going to lose our country. So I admire you guys for what you do. I admire you, even when you disagree with me, for at least giving me the opportunity to come on and talk about important issues. And this is an important fight to have, because if we can't speak about problems in this country, we do not have a real country to begin with.
Senator J.D. Vance, I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us. Thank you very much, and appreciate what you're doing for the people of Ohio. It's awesome that you're there fighting for them.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.